Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first live conversation. I'm Sophia, and I don't really care about the titles, but I am the content and marketing manager at Jobylon. And I'm actually in Mexico now for the winter. So it's 6 a.m. for me right now. But so morning for me, but good afternoon for to everyone who joined from Europe. Happy to see that people are tuning in. So in this Future of Work series, we will dive deeper into topics related to the future of work, but from a more human-centric perspective. And in this conversation today, we're going to talk about, or more specifically about, how to design an individualized workplace where your employees can blossom. So feel free to ask any questions during these 30 minutes if anything pops up. And for those of you that are only able to join for a little bit, we're going to send out the recording afterwards. So no worries if you have to leave. So today we have the amazing Karin Ulfhielm with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Karin, she develops successful leaders and teams as a coach and consultant and author in her role as a culture and leadership catalyst and renovator. I love the word renovator. And we've been actually connecting online, and I think you're like one of the most awesome people that I've never actually physically met. So I'm very excited to have you here today. And for those of you that don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do and about yourself?
Oh, well, how many hours do we have? I mean, no, well, you did introduce me, and that's basically what I do. Yeah. So I've been working with people my whole life in a way, especially my work life. And I realized like 15, 20 years ago that I do like the development part of it, the learning and all that. And I used to work within HR in the beginning and realized that, well, I'm not that into the law part of it, the agreements and all the administration. I want to be with people and I want to learn from them and perhaps also inspire them to learning. So, well, in 2005, I started my own business, which was I needed, the creativity, being able to try out my ideas and everything. Yeah. But, well, in recent years, I very much realized that, well, being in my own business, perhaps not the thing for me, being that social amoeba, or however that's pronounced in English, that I want to be together. I want to co-create. I want to collaborate. And I think that this thing that we're going to do, the conversation, is going to forever change us. I mean, with the mirror neurons and everything that goes on up in the brain, we do affect and infect and all kinds of things each other. So yeah, definitely. That was quite blurry, but I
love the blurry. That's all welcome, very much welcome here, the blurriness. And I totally agree. And especially after 1.5 years of not socializing and just connecting online, I think people are craving that more than ever. And it also relates to today's topic because companies are now, especially in Sweden, where the restrictions are lifted and they kind of have to navigate through that. I call it an identity crisis, because we kind of have to, make some decisions in terms of who do you want to be moving forward. And that doesn't necessarily have to be who you were in the past. Sorry for my early morning voice. So yeah, it's we live in a fascinating time. That's maybe even an understatement. And as many companies are figuring out and returning to some kind of new normal, it seems like the direction that we're heading towards is a more autonomous, flexible, inclusive, and geographical independent workplace. So I just wanted to ask you, like this individualized and hybrid workplace, do you think that's for everyone? And what do you think that will enable for employees?
Well, I think the interesting thing, me and my colleagues at Evolution, we do interview CEOs and have done so for a few months and just ask them, okay, so how has this been for you, the pandemic, and how are you going to work in the future and so on? And they actually, it differs very much depending on what kind of business you're actually running, of course. If you're in production, then you do have to be on a certain place. And if you are working as a doctor or a nurse, then you do have to be at a certain place. Yeah. And then we have the kind of company that you represent, which is completely different. And a lot of these tech companies that there are so many coming up all the time, which is super exciting. And I think that there will be much more of hybrid and remote and everything. And I mean, why not? Especially as we do sit in front of the keyboard and work in front of the screen most of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's more complex. I don't think that you can have one easy, a universal answer to that.
No, it's too diverse and different depending on what industry you're in and what a company you're working for, and it's been a lot of focus on companies, office workers that are actually working in front of a computer and in an actual office, and not so much about like the future of workers who are in a physical place and needs to be in that physical place. But like in terms of leadership, what do you think leaders need to think about when navigating in a new way of working, and what are the most important traits for that leader, you think?
Well, I think that the most important thing for every leader and every company is to create a safe place for people. I mean, the Amy Edmondson psychological safety, building trust, caring about your people. I think that has always been important, but it's become even more clear how important it actually is. So, and especially when the other day I listened to a podcast from Harvard Business Review on how should we approach the hybrid and how post-pandemic and what should we do? And well, when you need to manage people, I would say, and I'm like, manage people. It seems so the old way of perceiving how people work, and it's not necessarily that human-centric. Oh, did I say that about Harvard Business Review? Sorry. Well, I mean, I did listen, and there was quite a few great things that came from that conversation as well. But just the term manage it's like if you're playing chess and you move people from different parts of the chess table. It's like, no, it's not. Yeah. I don't think it should work like that, because we need to set people free in a way, and also pair that with, the caring, that you really care about your people, but that you also care enough that you can be candor with them.
Right.
Makes sense?
I think it makes sense, and especially the managing part. I personally, it all depends on like the intention behind it, but I do think it sounds very like humans can't take care of themselves. All the employees can't take care of themselves. Like they must have a parent who's managing, because otherwise everything will fall apart. And somehow I think facilitating is a nicer word to use for like, okay, and I mean the essential part of being a leader is not to, you know, lead people, but be together with the people and facilitate in the crowd. So like to be a part of the crowd rather to be, you know, so I understand your point of that. And I think especially now when we're moving towards a world where employees also have that sense of like, oh, like for the people who has been working from home, it's not everyone, of course, but that sense of empowerment, like, oh, I'm actually, you know, able to work from anywhere, or like I can manage my schedule in a way that works for me, and I want that like autonomy in my life. And I think it's a very empowering feeling for employees to feel like, oh, I can actually, like, I don't need someone to tell me, because I know that I will do it anyway, and I'll do it in a way that fits me best. And that's a win-win really for both companies and for the employees. And I was thinking, because we had a chat earlier about like the empathetic, this is an English word I'm like struggling with, empathetic.
Empathetic, yeah. I've been struggling with that word as well.
Because I always say pathetic. I'm like, it's not the word I want to use.
No, that's not the word.
It's not the word. So we talked a lot about empathetic. Sorry for the pronunciation. And how, because I think that's such an important component in this like future way of leading, not even future way of leading, just the way we should lead. What role do you think that empathetic management has, and what does that do for the employees' well-being?
Well, I think that is very much the caring part of it. That you're actually able to not necessarily project your own view of a thing to your or on your employee or your coworker, but instead be like Kierkegaard says, it's like if you want to teach or lead a person, you have to start where he or she is at, and then go from there. So it's like I do think it's super important that you can understand and relate to someone else. And I also think that, I mean, in combination with the candor, that's the caring is very much the empathetic. But the candor, that sounds as if, oh, we're going to get into a conflict and I'm going to have a hard conversation with you. And well, yes, but it's also about, if you're not being candor and only caring, then it's as if, okay, so don't you really care about me? Because suddenly the caring part becomes slightly less as well, because you don't have the candor. But the candor can mean that I really appreciate you, I'm being authentic with you, and I can see that when you do like this, then this happens. And well, you know, the feedback conversation. Yeah. So candor doesn't have to be that I'm telling you that this is something that you should change. It's more like I bring you a perspective of how I perceive you. And I think that if you would try it this way instead, perhaps you could reach further, sort of. Yeah, so that's, to me, it's funny that you said empathetic, because that's also something that, yeah, I think that is super important. I think that you need to be curious. You need to be curious both about yourself as a leader and about your coworkers, because it's also important that you know how you need to be able to lead yourself. You need to know how you react, and you need to be able to recognize that, to sort of label it, and also to regulate it. Otherwise, if you don't know what your needs are, then you are going to try to get them fulfilled without even knowing.
Right.
In a way. And especially if you're going to help your coworkers with several different things, or help them evolve and grow and everything, then you have to sort of put your own needs aside just for the moment, so that you can be present for the other person.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of work, and also extreme, you need to be very humble, I think, and also be willing to be vulnerable, not knowing all the time. Thank you for asking. I actually don't have an answer to that, but I will see if I can find it. Or what if you try to find an answer yourself, and also ask for help, of course.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Amazing. This is the future, where it sometimes you jump out of meetings and then you come back.
Yeah. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
I don't know when you left, so
I think I heard, because it planted some seeds in my head, and I was like, yes, and it reminded me of, I had a Brene Brown season, I would say, where I've just like indulged in everything that she says online, all her YouTube videos. I love her too. And she said something, I'll probably not be able to say it the way she did, but she said something like, I will love you, but I will hold you accountable while I love you. And I really love that statement, because I was like, I think that's something you can, use in a work setting as well. It's like that empathetic part is important, but also the accountability part. So, and that what you talked about, like that like kind of yin and yang, and have that, compassion and like the humanness in your leadership, and put aside your ego. And it's also a lot about, self-awareness as a leader, to shadow the shine a light of those parts in yourself that you haven't worked with. I know we talked about that earlier as well.
Yeah, I mean, when there's a book called Coherence, written by Dr. Alan Watkins. He's medicine doctor within medicine, but he's also very holistic in his view. And he I don't remember the company, but there's a company that all leaders in the management or leadership team has to go to a shrink. And they do that regularly, because what they can see is that the drives that a lot of, especially on C-level, that people at C-level do have, the ambition and everything, also quite often is connected with experiences from childhood, from adolescence and everything. And those are things that they need to sort of take care of, like the shadow material that you and I talked about.
Yes.
And I think that is, I was like, wow, finally someone's realizing how important this is. And again, the will to finding out, handling all of those things, so that you don't dump the shit basically on someone else, that you're able to actually handle it. And I mean, oh my God, I have a lot to do, but we all do, right? So I think that is also about trying to be authentic as you can. And again, not being, I am the leader, I have come to save you. No, it's not like that. It's more, it's important that you work on yourself, because that is what you're going to have to demand from all of your co-workers and colleagues as well. That's what this complex world is going to challenge us with. And the uncertainty, I mean, it's been very obvious during the pandemic and the restrictions and the lockdowns and everything, how closely connected we are to each other, and how important it is for this one to know things, to be certain. That's what this one is looking for. And when it is uncertain, the stress level and the threat response is there so much more the whole time, which is tiring us as well. And then now when we're getting back into the offices, I think that we need to be very, very careful with how we handle it, and not saying one size fits all. I think we need to be we definitely need to be on an individual level. Me, this social amoeba, I really have longed for meeting people in real life. And then 2 weeks back, when I went into town and meet a colleague of mine, I was like, don't breathe on me. And I suddenly realized that, this perhaps has affected me so much more than I realized. So again, we need to be very thoughtful and trying to meet people where they are, trying to see what are their needs and how can we fulfill them. And especially as a leader, then don't let all the energy just go to your co-workers. You need to take care of yourself as well, and find out what you need. So call the coach or the shrink or whatever, the therapist. I think that is we need to do that more often.
I love that. And it's like an involved leader has the opportunity to assist people in helping them in their self-leadership. And as a leader who helps people to lead themselves, has to be a leader who's aware of what's going on, and as well taking care of himself, because that's an essential part for a leader who leads and the people who lead themselves. And it's just like a ripple effect. So if the leader isn't taking care of himself or herself, it will, because it's like joining a company and you have a leader, and that leader represents hard work, which is amazing in a sense, but without the self-care part, and the empathy part, and the softer skill parts. It sets an example, and it sets this is the way it should go. So that leader has such an important part of inspiring other people in the company. So that part is so important, both the shadow to shine a light on things that you need to work with within yourself, as well as that self-care part. Because or in a time, I mean, even if there wasn't a pandemic, life can be tough. And with a pandemic, life has really been tough for everyone in like a certain level. And it's interesting, because especially now when things are changing, and especially when it comes to leadership, leaders can't rely on that control anymore, that I see you in the office, so I know that you're working. They have to find another way of leading. And I'm really fascinated about that, because it kind of forces, or it has been forcing leaders today to change their leadership style.
For sure. And also, I mean, there's that need for control. Perhaps it can be sort of translated into, okay, so let's look deeper into your needs. What do you need so that you don't need to micromanage your people? But
Yes.
instead, what is it that can you formalize it in some sort of meeting structure where you, or how can you see to that you do get input and see that things are progressing with your coworker, with the work that they're supposed to do, so that you can sort of calm your own triggers.
Yes.
In that sense. So yeah, I mean, we do have a lot of challenges with the world per se, with all the things that are changing, happening, and everything, and that we actually would like to have a globe that works also in 100 years, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
yeah, so many. Again, we're humans. I think it's interesting also, another thing that it's more complex than you having the full autonomy, working remotely and everything, because you also, as a coworker, do have the need for being included, being in the tribe. And so we do need to meet on a regular basis. We do need to connect on a human level. We need to get to know each other. We need to see that, yeah, this is Sophia. She's a friend, not a foe. We have a lot of things in common, and all of those things, because that also makes the cortisol go down. It calms us so that we can get into the collaborational state so much better. And continuing building the trust. So I mean, it's both exciting and it's scary at the same time, but that's where development happens, right? That's where we grow. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I can only speak from my own experience of, have been working remotely for almost 4 years, and it's interesting what happens every time I go back to the office, which happens once in a while, depending on where I'm at in the world. And it really, we can't change that. Like, it's amazing to work remotely, but I feel like I can't deny that I need that human interaction with the people that I am digitally interacting with every day, because there's so much of the communication that gets lost in the digital communication. And even so, when you do, for most of the time, communicate digitally, it's so important to recognize each other's ways of communicating. I heard a lot of stories about, like, a friend was like, oh, I think this coworker hates me because she's never puts a smiley in the end of this message. And I was like, that's so funny, because it's just a matter of, really talking about each other's preferred way of communicating. And even especially when it comes to, I know you mentioned feedback, how you give or receive feedback in a digital sense, and how you do that in a way that doesn't hurt and that's respectful, but still, the Brene Brown way is like, I love you, or maybe I don't love my coworker, but I like you, but I will hold you accountable while I like you and respect you. Yeah, it's a fascinating, way or a world of being kind of part of both. But I do really agree on the fact that that real human interaction is so vital in order to feel included, especially when you're working in a company where some people are in an actual office and are there in an office full time, and some people aren't. So how do you make everyone feel included in that?
I need to tell you just a brief, I've tried to keep it brief, a story about how a company, one of those CEOs that we interviewed, what have you done to sort of handle all this crisis during the pandemic with your people? How have you held them, not accountable at all, but so that they really feel that you care and everything, and keep them engaged and so on and so forth. And so they had the opportunity to actually contribute to the larger or the bigger challenges when it came to the pandemic. So they had a platform that they could build upon. So they had a really important purpose together that they could work on. But then they also had this, you can, how are you feeling? And so they could express it with emojis if they wanted to. They could express it with words. They could express it, and they were not necessarily, nudged into, oh, I feel desperate or I feel happy. It was very a free will of how they wanted to react. But that was also a way of, taking away that tension of the feelings, just letting it out in a way. And they had these Slack channels for it. And that was relieving for a lot of them. And that was a super important thing, I think, during the especially in the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes away that kind of seriousness in it.
Yeah.
And just more like a safe space where people can express whatever they feel like expressing in that time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I see that we're over time already. Yeah. This went way too. I felt like we just got into like the good stuff, and I feel like I could have talked for hours and hours, like always with you.
Let's reschedule.
Let's do a part 2 for sure. It's been so great to see everyone who's been joining, even though I can't see you physically. And it's been so great to have you here, Karin. As I said, could have talked for hours about this, and I have a lot of new insights that I always journal in the end of a conversation like this, because I want to get all the good stuff out so I don't forget it. But thank you so much for joining. And I just wanted to say that our next live conversation will be held in November with Ida Vate from Mindler, and we're going to talk about mental health. That I personally think it's one of the most important topics in this day and age. Yeah. So I hope to see you there. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to send out the recording afterwards. So don't worry if you missed the first or the second part. So thank you so much. And thank you, Karin. And I'll see you soon.